Welcome to Innovation Pulse, your quick, no-nonsense update on the latest in clean tech and EVs. First, we will cover the latest news. Tesla's Robotaxi service launches in Austin with some ride quality issues amid fierce competition, while China leads the global EV market through strategic government investment and innovation. After this, we'll dive deep into how China's EV dominance is reshaping global automotive dynamics. Tesla's Robotaxi service launched in a limited Austin neighborhood, only available to select fans with a Tesla employee present. This modest start contrasts with Elon Musk's ambitious promises of a vast ride-hailing service since 2019, including self-driving cars without steering wheels or pedals. The debut used existing Model Y vehicles rather than the futuristic Cybercab. While Tesla fans celebrated this as a significant step, the service lagged behind competitors like Waymo, which already offers extensive robotaxi services in multiple cities. The initial rides in Tesla's service cost $4.20, a nod to Musk's favorite number. Despite some ride quality issues, Musk remains optimistic about rapid expansion. Meanwhile, others like General Motors have faced setbacks, with GM halting its service after an accident in San Francisco and citing competitive pressures in the robotaxi market. Tesla launched its robotaxi service in Austin, Texas, but it's limited to a single neighborhood and a select group of fans. A Tesla employee is in the front seat, and Model Y vehicles are used instead of the promised cybercabs. This modest rollout contrasts with Tesla CEO Elon Musk's grand vision since 2019 of a widespread ride-hailing service that could transform transportation and Tesla's financial status. Despite the limited launch, fans celebrated this step. Some rides went smoothly, but others faced hiccups, like driving on the wrong side of the road. Each ride costs $4.20. Musk claims the service will expand rapidly, but Tesla lags behind competitors like Waymo, which offers thousands of rides weekly. General Motors halted its self-driving service due to competition and a significant accident. And now, pivot our discussion towards the main clean tech topic.
Today, we're going to explore one of the most remarkable industrial transformations of our time: how China went from being a nation of bicycles to becoming the undisputed global leader in electric vehicles. We're talking about a country where nearly half of all cars sold last year were electric, where drivers choose EVs not for prestige, but for practical economic reasons, and where the entire automotive landscape has been fundamentally reshaped through strategic government planning and massive investment. This isn't just about cars. It's about how a developing nation leapfrogged established industries and potentially changed the future of transportation worldwide.
Thanks for that comprehensive introduction, Donna. This really is a fascinating case study in industrial strategy and technological transformation. The speed and scale of what China has accomplished in the EV space is truly unprecedented. Please, go ahead with your first question.
Let's start with the current reality on the ground. What does the electric vehicle landscape actually look like in China today?
The transformation is absolutely remarkable when you witness it firsthand. In cities like Guangzhou, with over 18 million people, the traditional roar of rush-hour traffic has literally become a hum. We're talking about a country where almost half of all cars sold last year were electric vehicles. That's a penetration rate that makes other markets look almost primitive by comparison. But what's most striking is the fundamental shift in consumer mindset. The drivers I've spoken with, like private hire driver Lu Yunfeng, aren't choosing electric vehicles for environmental reasons or status. They're choosing them because they're poor, and EVs save them money. This represents a complete inversion of the typical EV adoption pattern we see in Western markets, where electric vehicles are often considered luxury purchases. In China, it's become a banal economic reality rather than an aspirational choice.
That economic motivation is fascinating. Can you break down the actual cost savings these drivers are experiencing?
The numbers are quite compelling when you look at the day-to-day economics. Take Lu Yunfeng's experience as an example. He used to spend 200 yuan, about $28, to fill up his petrol car for 400 kilometers of driving. Now, with his electric vehicle, it costs him just a quarter of that amount to cover the same distance. That's a 75% reduction in fuel costs, which for a private hire driver working every day translates to massive annual savings. But the savings go beyond just charging costs. The Chinese government has created a comprehensive incentive structure where EV owners get their green registration plates for free, while traditional car owners normally pay thousands of yuan for their plates, sometimes more than the cost of the car itself. These policies were designed to limit congestion and pollution, but they've created a powerful economic incentive that makes electric vehicles the rational choice for cost-conscious consumers.
Those are impressive savings. How did China develop this strategic approach to electric vehicles?
The origins trace back to a pivotal moment in the mid-2000s with Wang Gang, a German-trained engineer who became China's Minister of Trade and Science in 2007. He made a crucial observation about China's automotive landscape. While China had become the world's largest car market, the streets of Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou were dominated by foreign brands. Chinese automakers simply couldn't compete with European, American, and Japanese manufacturers when it came to traditional petrol and diesel vehicles. These established companies had decades of technological advantage and brand prestige. But Wang Gang recognized that China had something these competitors didn't: ample resources, a skilled labor force, and an existing ecosystem of suppliers in the motor industry. Rather than try to catch up in traditional automotive technology, he decided to change the game and flip the script by moving to electrics. This became what analysts now call the master plan, essentially using electric vehicles as a way to leapfrog the established automotive hierarchy and create an entirely new competitive landscape where China could start from a position of strength.
That's brilliant strategic thinking. How did the government actually implement this vision?
The implementation showcases China's unique capacity to mobilize vast resources over long time periods towards strategic objectives. While EVs had been included in China's 5-year economic blueprints as early as 2001, the real acceleration began in the 2010s when the government started providing massive subsidies to grow the industry. According to analysis by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Beijing spent approximately $231 billion from 2009 to the end of 2023 developing the EV sector. This wasn't just throwing money at manufacturers, it was a comprehensive ecosystem approach. Everyone in the value chain received support. Consumers got purchase subsidies and tax exemptions. Car makers received development funding. Electricity providers got infrastructure investment, and battery suppliers received technology development assistance. The government encouraged companies like BYD to pivot from making smartphone batteries to focusing on electric vehicles, and supported the creation of companies like CATL, which was founded in 2011, and now produces a third of all batteries used in EVs worldwide.
Let's talk about BYD specifically. How did they become the global leader?
BYD's rise is really the embodiment of China's strategic approach, working in practice. The company leveraged its existing expertise in battery technology. They were already making smartphone batteries and redirected that capability toward electric vehicles with government support and encouragement. This allowed them to develop integrated solutions where they controlled both the vehicle manufacturing and the critical battery technology, giving them significant advantages in cost and performance optimization. Their success has been amplified by China's massive domestic market of over 1.4 billion people, which provided the scale necessary to achieve cost efficiencies and technological refinement. BYD overtook Tesla to become the global EV market leader earlier this year, and they're now aggressively expanding internationally. But they're not alone. There's an entire ecosystem of Chinese EV startups that are producing affordable electric vehicles for the mass market, all competing fiercely within China's domestic market before expanding globally.
You mentioned KATL as well. How important has battery technology been to China's success?
Battery technology has been absolutely central to China's dominance, and KITL's story illustrates this perfectly. Founded in 2011 in Ningde, CITL now supplies major global automakers, including Tesla, Volkswagen, and Ford, and produces a third of all EV batteries worldwide. This dominance in battery production has given China control over the most critical and expensive component of electric vehicles. The strategic implications are enormous. As one analyst put it, if you want to manufacture a battery to put into an electric car today, all roads go through China. This control over the supply chain means that even foreign automakers are increasingly dependent on Chinese battery technology and manufacturing capacity. Combined with China's dominance in processing the raw materials needed for batteries, this creates a level of control over the EV ecosystem that extends far beyond just selling cars in the Chinese market.
Infrastructure must have been crucial too. How did China build out charging networks?
China's infrastructure development has been as impressive as its manufacturing capabilities. The government coordinated the construction of the world's largest public charging network, with stations strategically concentrated in major cities to ensure drivers are never more than minutes away from the nearest charger. This infrastructure investment was crucial because it eliminated one of the primary barriers to EV adoption: range anxiety and charging convenience. But China has gone beyond just traditional charging infrastructure. Companies like NIO have developed automated battery swapping stations where machines can replace a depleted battery with a fully charged one in under 3 minutes. This technology, available at a cost less than filling a tank of fuel, represents the kind of innovative infrastructure solutions that have made EV ownership more convenient than traditional vehicles in many Chinese cities. The comprehensive nature of this infrastructure investment demonstrates how coordinated government planning can accelerate technology adoption.
Critics call this state capitalism and unfair competition. How do Chinese companies respond to these concerns?
Chinese EV executives strongly dispute the characterization that they receive unfair advantages. Brian Gu, president of XPeng, argues that the Chinese government is simply doing what European and American governments do, providing policy support, consumer encouragement, and infrastructure development. He contends that China has implemented these policies consistently and in a way that fosters genuine competition, with no favoritism toward any particular companies. The Chinese industry perspective is that all companies, whether domestic or foreign, have access to the same resources and support systems. They argue that what's created China's thriving EV sector isn't unfair government support, but rather fierce competition and a culture of innovation that emerges when you have dozens of companies competing in the same market with similar access to resources. From their viewpoint, the success comes from creating the most competitive landscape possible, where companies must continuously innovate and reduce costs to survive.
Can you give us a specific example of this competitive innovation in action?
XPeng provides an excellent example of how this competitive pressure drives innovation. The company is barely a decade old and hasn't yet turned a profit, but it's already among the world's top 10 EV producers. Their headquarters in Guangzhou feels more like a Silicon Valley tech company than a traditional automaker, complete with a colorful slide from the top floor to ground level and staff who look like they could be working at a startup. But despite the relaxed atmosphere, the pressure to deliver better cars at lower prices is, as Brian Gu describes it, immense. XPeng's recently launched Mona Max retails for around $20,000, but includes features like self-driving capability, voice activation, lie-flat beds, and streaming entertainment. Features that young Chinese graduates consider standard for a first car purchase. This represents a fundamental shift in expectations, where advanced technology, features that would be luxury options in other markets, are considered baseline requirements in China's competitive EV landscape.
What about the consumer incentives? How do government subsidies actually work for buyers?
The consumer incentive structure is remarkably comprehensive and directly addresses the economic factors that influence purchasing decisions. Beyond the basic purchase subsidies for trading in non-electric vehicles for EVs, buyers receive significant tax exemptions and access to subsidized rates at public charging stations. These aren't minor adjustments. They represent substantial financial benefits that fundamentally alter the economics of vehicle ownership. The registration plate system I mentioned earlier is particularly clever policy design. By making EV plates free while charging thousands for traditional vehicle plates, the government created a powerful economic signal that makes electric vehicles the obvious rational choice for cost-conscious consumers. When you combine this with the dramatically lower operating costs, Lu Yunfeng's 75% reduction in fuel costs is typical. The financial case for EVs becomes overwhelming. This explains why drivers explicitly say they choose electric vehicles because they're poor, not because they're wealthy enough to afford luxury technology.
Looking internationally, how are other countries responding to China's EV dominance?
The international response has been quite dramatic and reveals significant concern about China's competitive advantages. The United States, Canada, and the European Union have all imposed substantial import tariffs on Chinese EVs, essentially admitting that their domestic industries can't compete on price and features without protection. These tariffs represent a recognition that Chinese EVs have achieved cost and performance advantages that make them extremely attractive to consumers. However, the UK has taken a different approach, declining to impose similar tariffs and making itself an attractive market for Chinese EV manufacturers. Companies like XPeng began delivering their G6 model to British consumers in March, while BYD launched its Dolphin Surf model this month for as little as $26 to $100. This creates an interesting dynamic where some markets are trying to exclude Chinese EVs while others are embracing them, potentially creating competitive advantages for countries willing to access Chinese EV technology and manufacturing capabilities.
There are also security concerns being raised. How significant are these worries about Chinese EVs?
The security concerns represent a familiar pattern we've seen with other Chinese technologies. Britain's former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, recently characterized Chinese EVs as computers on wheels that could potentially be controlled from Beijing, even suggesting they could one day immobilize British cities. These concerns echo previous debates about Chinese telecommunications infrastructure maker Huawei and social media app TikTok, both of which faced restrictions in Western countries. BYD's executive vice president Stella Li dismissed these concerns quite directly, saying, "Anyone can claim anything if they lose the game. But so what?" She emphasized that BYD maintains very high data security standards, uses local carriers for data, and actually performs better on security than competitors. However, these concerns do reflect broader geopolitical tensions about technological dependence and the extent to which critical infrastructure should rely on technology from strategic competitors. The debate highlights the tension between the economic benefits of accessing advanced Chinese EV technology and concerns about potential security vulnerabilities.
What does the future hold? Where is this all heading?
The trajectory suggests we're witnessing a fundamental shift in global automotive manufacturing that could reshape the entire industry. As one analyst observed, the Chinese are thinking about a future where they manufacture just about every single car for the world. Chinese companies are looking around and asking whether anyone can do it better than them, and increasingly, the answer appears to be no. Leaders in Detroit, Nagoya, Germany, and the UK are recognizing that this represents a new era where Chinese companies feel very confident about their prospects. This creates a fascinating paradox for Western governments that have enthusiastically backed the transition to electric vehicles, which the United Nations calls pivotal to averting climate disaster. Several countries, including the UK, have committed to banning petrol and diesel car sales by 2030, but no country is better positioned to help make this reality achievable than China. The question becomes whether Western nations will prioritize their climate goals and accept Chinese EV dominance, or whether they'll try to develop domestic alternatives that can compete, a challenge that becomes more difficult with each passing year as China's technological and cost advantages continue to expand.
Yakov, this has been absolutely fascinating. Any final thoughts on this transformation?
What we're witnessing in China's EV revolution is really a masterclass in strategic industrial policy and long-term thinking. The combination of government coordination, massive investment, and genuine market competition has created something unprecedented, a complete transformation of not just an industry, but consumer behavior and urban environments. The fact that the roar of rush hour in Guangzhou has become a hum really captures the magnitude of this change. But perhaps the most important lesson is how China identified an emerging technology where they could compete on equal terms, then systematically built advantages through coordinated investment, infrastructure development, and market creation. Whether other countries can replicate this approach, or whether they'll need to find entirely different strategies to compete in this new automotive landscape, will likely define the next decade of global economic competition. For now, China has fundamentally changed the game, and everyone else is still figuring out how to respond. And that wraps up today's podcast. We explored Tesla's Robotaxi venture in Austin and China's strategic rise as a leader in the electric vehicle market. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and colleagues so they can also stay updated on the latest news and gain powerful insights. Stay tuned for more updates.